Most games are all about making you feel powerful or successful, like a hero or an edgy action film star. They give you some sort of fantastical goal about saving or destroying whatever, and you go and do that with guns, vehicles, jumping, sneaking, or whatever. And games like those tend to conspicuously omit a lot of the crap that would realistically get in a hero's way. This is because, like in any sort of dramatic art, games need to put a certain emphasis on the elements that drive the adventure forward, or else these things begin to fall apart as they lose their direction and definition. It's only natural that in most shooters you don't have to worry about health or ammunition as anything particularly more detailed than numbers on a screen, because most shooters are about glorious murder. But games that revolve around something like survival or exploration instead of heroism generally take a much slower pace and drive the plot forward by dealing with elements that other games would normally gloss over. Miasmata is just one such game. It's set in an entirely open island world, but it commandeers a load of elements that any other open world game would consider trivial dogshit, like mapping the landscape, searching out special items, and even engaging with the wildlife. And it fleshes out these elements into major facets of gameplay that are deep, challenging, and unbelievably captivating, and it culminates in what is one of the best games ever made. As Miasmata begins, you embody Robert Hughes, waking up on the shore of an unfamiliar archipelago named Eden. You have a disease referred to only as the plague, and as you make your first movements toward nearby huts, you discover that the people inhabiting the island were working on a cure for the plague and that they're all dead now. You set out to find more information on the ingredients in these components, and of course to figure out more about the story. The game's storytelling is much like a research-based adventure game. Because you're alone and in a world whose technology is roughly a century old, the story is told through logs that you find as you explore the world. The journal entries for the main characters are just scattered in a pretty contrived way at cabins and tents across the archipelago, and they aren't all that interesting. Likewise, though the narrative doesn't ride on it solely or anything, there's a sizable revelation that could have been shocking but is so easy to spot from early on in the game. But the story as a whole isn't stupid. Logs go into a lot of detail about the researchers' discoveries, the landscape, and even a little bit of politics, and it all gives the setting cohesion and depth that make exploration more than just a matter of finding a waypoint. And that's extremely important, because exploration is Miasmata's backbone. Your main goal is to find all 6 special ingredients used in the plague's cure growing in the world, and your side goals revolve around searching out other medicinal plants too. But locating them is more than just a matter of finding a note or something that yields a waypoint for you to follow. The game brings out the intrepid explorer you didn't know you had in you by focusing all of its elements around both the use and survival of the world around you. Naturally, you wake up at the beginning of the game with no foreknowledge of Eden's geography, but while the researchers haven't compiled a complete map of Eden, at least not one that you can find, they have mapped out some key areas near special research outposts and a few of the island's useful plants. In the beginning, these predefined maps give you a good indication of where to search for useful resources throughout the game, but they still leave the environment completely open to exploration and experimentation. After your first dilemma-free survey or two, though, if you want to go any farther, you need to acquaint yourself with your own map and the cartography system. Eden is full of distinct visible landmarks, and they do more than just give it a touch of character. You discover huts, tents, large head sculptures, and other monuments as you traverse the islands, and you point toward the ones you already have marked up on your map, called known landmarks, to triangulate your position. By triangulating your own location, you draw a sizable portion of the land around you as well, automatically designating all the landmarks in that area as known for further use. In addition, you can triangulate more distant landmarks by pointing toward them from 2 separate spots you've just triangulated. Cartography is a pretty patient, methodical process, and it's so intricate and implemented so naturally that it's easily one of the game's most shining features. The landmarks you need are all spread across the island usefully, but in a way that never feels contrived. You can't just triangulate your position from any given spot, nor will you need to pixel hunt your way through previously uncharted territory. The game finds a good balance between landmark availability and actually making you go out and do stuff. The cartography system also proves an excellent vessel for examining the environment. As you triangulate, you're not just making the map bigger, you're familiarizing yourself with the exact location of the landmarks, which you'll use a hell of a lot by the way, and associating them with even some of the finest details in the environments close by. Understanding exactly where you are is key to your survival, especially since you can't normally pinpoint your location unless you've triangulated yourself or you're right next to a landmark, and map making makes that daunting procedure extremely intuitive. Sometimes, though, where you have to go to find the plants you need is not immediately apparent. The maps you're given near the starting area of the game give you general locations where you can find concentrations of the important stuff, but as you move on, matters become a little more complex. Logs you find describing the special plants don't always give you their whereabouts, but they do detail the environments they grow in. They'll tell you about certain ruins to check out, or biomes to explore, and they'll display a sketch or two of the thing you're looking for. After that, it's entirely up to you to use the knowledge of the environment you've gathered and try to make your way there. Not many games refuse to give objective markers everywhere anymore, so it may seem unusual at first. But since the environment makes sense and is filled with distinguishable unique elements, the mechanic is intuitive and really engaging. When you find a plant you need, you pick it up and of course need to carry it back to storage. Carrying is a little funny since you don't appear to have pockets and you can only carry one specimen of each variety, and 3 specimens total at any given time. But truly useful plants are fairly spread out in the world, so you probably won't have much need for more space between visits to the safe spots where you can store your quarry. Tents and research stations all have specimen storage bins where you can place your goods that aren't yet ready for synthesis into medicines. Your bins carry up to 6 specimens at a time, but again, while that may not seem like many, you normally only need 2 plants to synthesize whatever medicine you want. The storage bins also update across the island, which is a massive contrivance, but works out well considering the matter that you can't carry much. It's functionally a far better system than needing to go back to the same few outposts to do all the examination and synthesis. Examination and synthesis are surprisingly small mechanics in Miasmata and serve more as the end of a challenge. At a research station, you set down the plant you want and then use the microscope to start examining. After a short montage plays, you open up your journal to find a new entry detailing that plant's properties and how it can be combined with other types of plants during synthesis for better results. The process of medicine synthesis is about as simple as you put the specimens you need in their trays and play the synthesis montage, presenting some kind of medicine for you at the end. It's very simple, but it's not the focus of the game at all. It's the logical conclusion to all the work you've done exploring the island so far. If you're interested in this game, chance would have it that, just like me, you haven't endured actual physical stress in quite a long time. You're used to thinking that you're just a hitbox with physical properties that moves at a specific speed in a specific direction at will. But the outliers among people like us will recall an archaic activity called hiking, which involves not just moving up a constantly changing incline, but maintaining balance and exhibiting strength just as well. Unlike most games, Miasmata employs a player physics system that lets you slip, stumble, and fall just about as you would in real life. When you're walking anywhere that isn't an actual beaten path, you need to watch your step. If you go down a slope the wrong way, you wind up gaining dangerous momentum, and you need to level yourself by essentially forcing yourself in the opposite direction. Eden is a very uneven place with pretty much the bare minimum in regard to man-made structures, and most of the useful stuff grows only out in the wild. Pretty much every journey you make requires careful footing, taking routes that don't look like the most direct, but often end up safer than their seemingly quicker alternatives. It's this sort of mechanic that makes any part of Miasmata a genuine challenge, which is much needed considering how innocuous most of the game seems initially. But that's not all the game has to offer. The star of Miasmata is undoubtedly the beast, a big horned predator that takes particular interest in you. It's the only enemy you face in the entire game, but that's by no means a flaw. It's better than what nearly any game can throw at you. Its appearances are seemingly random, though they do occur with greater frequency as you make more progress, and its behavior is just perfect. Its AI is something truly fascinating and expertly polished, so it behaves like a real animal. The situations in which you encounter the beast lend themselves naturally towards stealth, but it has more than just a regular stealth pattern where it starts chasing and attacking whenever it spots you. It bases its movements upon reaction. It follows you and observes you and circles around you, and it gets excited by any sudden movements. It also manages to move very fluidly across any terrain, and even has expressions that make close encounters truly captivating. You can swing sharp objects at it, but you don't have any real means to injure or kill the beast. which makes sense since it's about twice or thrice your size and you're functionally just a leper carrying a map and some flowers. But it doesn't follow that the game allows you no means of defense against it. You just can't kill it. The most useful tool at your disposal is stealth, where you normally try to sneak past it by hiding in tall brush and throwing something to distract it. Normally I would elect to flee for the hills whenever I encountered it, but the stealth mechanics are very solid and robust. If and when it spots you though, you still have a chance of driving the beast off temporarily. It will attempt to approach you and examine you closely and even take a swing or two at you almost playfully. And nearly always you can find something lying on the ground that you'd be able to swing or throw at it to keep it at bay. With enough intimidation, you can buy yourself a few moments to slip away. Of course you can always flee instantly, but because of the enemy's speed and the dangers of navigating rough terrain, it's the riskiest option you have. The only way to definitely get the beast to leave is to reach a human settlement, which guarantees your safety. Its aversion to man-made structures fits well with its personality and means that, once again, environmental awareness is invaluable. It's in encounters with the beast that I've experienced what are some of the most memorable gaming moments I've ever had, and if you're at all interested in what I've just described, you just might feel the same way. Despite your deadly infection, you aren't actually in danger of dying a slow death. Survival is a key element to the game, but Miasmata isn't a Samoan pathologic or anything. All the medicines you create are there to boost your abilities, recover your health, or just complete the game, rather than actually fight off any kind of damage the disease is incurring. The only resources you need to worry about are your water, which you can find in any freshwater source, and sleep, meaning that the only things you have to set out for are the flowers that lead to the cure. All of the game's survival elements revolve around immediate threats, like steep slopes you can stumble down, or a big cat that wants to eat you. It wasn't the kind of survival challenge I was imagining the game would pose at all when I first heard of it, but it all works very well together. Miasmata makes a definite, strong effort to immerse you aesthetically in all this adventuring as well. The game never leaves the first-person perspective and never takes control away from you. While you don't see your feet, which is totally excusable, you are always able to see your hands, and they don't follow your camera precisely or anything. Some of the hand animations are kind of jumpy, but they still respond realistically to your movements, which is just great and surprisingly rare in first-person games. All of your standard in-game menu screens, like your map, medicine inventory, and journal, are in your character's hands, and they don't pause the game, meaning that you're kept in the world as much as possible, even as you do the most computer-gamey stuff the game has to offer. The guys at IonFx have managed to make a truly gorgeous game as well. Overall, its visual quality is a little inconsistent, but in every way that matters, every way that enhances the atmosphere that is, it's just excellent. The sky technology features a dynamic rolling cloud cover that's truly breathtaking, and the sunsets over the water are easily some of the most gorgeous. In the distance, some of the views include far-off land that's made of ugly, repeating textures with no sort of foliage rendered on top, but up close everything is extremely detailed, with leaves and small plants all over the ground, dense foliage, and even small critters scampering around. There's also some excellent fog that rolls in or takes up parts of the environment seamlessly, and it uses actual 3D sun shafts instead of that god-awful fake light projection shit that you find running rampant in Unreal Engine 3 games. Though the visuals don't normally have much to do with gameplay, of course, one instance where the technology really adds to the game itself is at night. You rarely need to go out at night, and it's probably best to avoid all the nocturnal adventures that you can. At night, your only light sources are your lighter, branches that you can burn, and the moon. The lighter is as weak as you'd expect, and burning branches are temporary. The moon is pretty vibrant when it's visible, but at any time a cloud can roll in and leave you in almost pitch darkness. I didn't think of any of the survival as actually scary during the day, but at night the absence of light turns Miasmata into a full-on survival horror game. Unless you know exactly where you are, every step you take is an extreme risk, and until you encounter the beast for the first time and figure out the telltale signs that it's nearby, pretty much every sound you hear can set you off. And should you actually encounter the real thing, you're in for a pretty great rush. It's a truly unnerving task to reach any safe space after dark. As for the sound, the game's music is solid in that it exists and works well with the atmosphere, but it isn't very interesting beyond the first tune you hear. It takes the right approach though, and only cues upon reaching an interesting landmark when it's actually really fitting. The rest of the time, the only soundtrack is the fantastic ambient noise from the world around you. Some actions, like the research and synthesis montages, are surprisingly devoid of any actual Foley sound, but out in the world, the sound all feels just right, whether it's a distant bird call or the scratching noise of your feet losing traction with the rocky dirt beneath them. But I find what's most fascinating about this game is that it's all designed by a total of 2 people. Pretty great games come out of very small teams all the time now, but Miasmata has a totally different scale from so many games out there. Of course, this completely excuses the game's aesthetic shortcomings, but more importantly, it highlights all that these 2 people have created. The environment isn't just pretty in pictures, it's a whole ecosystem that's carefully crafted and somehow made so intuitive yet challenging to explore. The engine goes a little silly at times, but it's extremely versatile and allows for so much detail. The story is thorough, with all sorts of ties that make the environment come to life. The game mechanics are wholly unconventional and very intricate, and that thing that hunts you is a bigger labor of love than most whole games out there. It's apparent in every aspect of Miasmata that the guys at IonFx are masters of their craft, and they've created something that anyone interested in discovery, survival, or open world games absolutely must try.
It's better than regular sex.